Welcome back to PodRocket, a web development podcast brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket provides AI-first session replay and analytics, which surface the UX and technical issues impacting user experiences. Start understanding where your users are struggling by trying it for free at logrocket.com. Hey, everybody. I am your host today, Paige Niedringhaus, and I am a staff software engineer at Blues and co-host of the weekly Front End Fire web development podcast. And we're back with another panel episode for this month where we'll be talking about web content control, tech antitrust cases, web security, and AI mandates at work. But before we get into it, let's welcome back our panelist members. We have Paul Mikulskis, a PodRocket host and YouTuber.
Hey, Paige. Happy to be here and talk about all the spicy things we always talk about.
Oh, yeah. And Noel Minchow, a LogRocket developer.
Hey, Paige, I think this will be a good one. I'm excited to jump in.
I think so, too. So we have a lot of interesting, spicy topics for today. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is platform standards and control of the web. And we touched on this in last month's episode, if you listened to it, where Perplexity is getting into some hot water because it may or may not be actually following the rules as opposed to crawling different websites' content. So to give you a little bit more background, there is a standards organization called the IETF, and it is actively debating how robots.txt files should evolve for the age of AI. Proposals like AI preferences aim to give site owners more control over whether the AI crawlers can use their content, while there are new licensing standards like RSL, really simple licensing, which suggest embedding terms and royalty structures directly into site metadata. Of course, the big tech companies are pushing back, warning about data fragmentation and enforcement challenges. And then in other news that is related, the browser company, which is the maker of the Arc browser and now the Dia AI browser, have announced that they've been acquired by Atlassian, one of the biggest tech companies around. And the acquisition kind of highlights how even the small indie browser projects are ended up folded into larger platforms, which raises questions about innovation, independence, and platform consolidation. Before we talk about Dia and Atlassian, let's talk a little bit about the AI training. In your guys' opinion, should the default be opt-in or opt-out for the AI training crawlers?
It's already opt-out. I don't have to opt in now. Google just takes it anyway.
Who knows? I do want to draw the distinction between agent, real-time fetching, data retrieval, and autonomous crawling for model training, because those still feel very different to me. I do think we need signals to indicate that a work is protected by some legal, this is copyrighted, non-for use, and all that kind of thing. I think that needs to be signaled somewhere. I wish that the regulatory bodies were approaching it more from that angle, because it's hard to know exactly what is a browser. That's going to keep changing over the coming months. So it's hard for me to answer a question should the default be opt-in or opt-out? Because it probably depends on exactly what we mean when we say AI crawler. That seems very broad.
And I guess a lot of the stuff you would think is a live crawl, to play devil's advocate here, Noel, you could run that as an ELT when you crawl and have all the information anyways. So I'll hop on the it depends bandwagon as well. And it also what is a fingerprint? What is a piece of copyright, a watermark? We're stepping into a very fuzzy time of what is that, because a watermark is realistically or some fingerprint. It's a heuristic of identity. It's a heuristic to help us achieve this vision of identity. And we're getting to the point now where it's so fine-grained into how something's different. Can you put a patent through? It really has to be different. So the fidelity of what is something, what is its fingerprint, is just a thing itself. You're fingerprinting music. The talk of the town now is the fingerprint is the song. That's the best we can get. So I don't know how they really want to make a separate subsection of licensable, traceable fingerprints and do that, because it feels like a dead end a little bit.
The genie's kind of out of the bottle at this point. Everything that has been available on the web up till this point has pretty much been crawled, if it can be. So it almost seems like it's a moot point at this point to have opt-in or opt-out for training, because they crawled the majority of it.
Getting paid for that is a different conversation. There can be royalties associated with activity around it, but the cat's out of the bag, the genie's out of the bottle. What can you do?
Yeah, because we've talked before about the robots.txt. I don't think that those are really enforceable. I think that the big tech companies who have abided by them are doing so basically because they need the PR to be good around them, like Google Google or Microsoft. But for the smaller up and coming AI companies especially, they don't care about that. They just need to scrape as much data as they can off the web, learn as much as they can, make their models as good as they can. They don't care if they're being good stewards or generating good PR. They need to keep getting investment dollars and keep going at this point. They can be good stewards later on.
It's very easy for them to have plausible deniability as well. They can say like, oh, the robots.txt was configured correctly for all these sites and that person illegally mirrored it, but how are we supposed to know? Or not even illegally, but like didn't follow the standards on doing whatever. We're not supposed to be the stewards of the internet. Like it's the same argument that Google made historically. It's kind of a tricky one too, with the original intent of robots.txt not being like a tool to gatekeep crawlers away from things, but like a way to functionally tell them like, hey, this shouldn't be indexed because it's meaningless to arrive at this. It was a tool that was meant to help inform other tools just on like how to be interacted with, not to like bar them from doing something in particular with it. That didn't really ever seem like what the intent was. So I think the wires are a little bit crossed here. Again, I don't know if there's any strong legal precedent for ignoring these or like doing something like that outside of what we were mentioning with like copyright and patent law. But I don't anticipate it changing, to your guys' point. Maybe the like Cloudflares end up coming in and continue to try to play arbiter here, but I'm not sure
Elizabeth
I want to be in that
production
future
assistant
either.
for PodRocket. We're running a listener survey to help shape future episodes and make the podcast a better experience. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes of your time, and you can find the link in the description.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the acquisition of Dia that happened by Atlassian a couple of weeks ago. Honestly, I did not see that one coming. It seemed like Dia was going to get bought by somebody, but I certainly was not expecting it to be Atlassian of all the companies. Do you think that this acquisition, which Atlassian says is ostensibly to make Dia the work-focused browser, the work-focused AI browser, because Atlassian, for those who don't know, owns Jira, it owns Trello, it owns Loom, it owns like SaaS tools that your company probably uses if you do web development. Do you think that it signals the end of any indie browser innovation, or do you think that there will still be these little browsers coming out and trying to be different or be unique in some way?
No, I don't think so. I don't want to make it sound like it's not a lot of work to make a browser. Like browsers are very sophisticated pieces of software. I'm not worried about innovation or anything in this space. If anything, I think, at least for me, I find this like a little bit positive. Like I like the story of new browsers coming onto the scene and like having success in some way or another. Like anything that decentralizes the hegemony of Chrome is like a win for me. I'm not upset about it.
But here's the thing about that. All of the new browsers that have been coming out, except for Ladybird, which is its own like very off in the corner, building everything from scratch idea, all these new AI browsers are built off of Chrome. They're all using Chrome under the hood. They're just bolting on different AI tools and technologies. Yeah, Perplexities, whatever theirs is called, like Opera Air, they're all Chrome underneath. So maybe it's not the browser, or maybe it's not like Atlassian that's signaling the end of indie development. But if everybody just wants to bolt their own AI agent onto it and Chrome is like the platform of choice, maybe that is signaling something dangerous to the rest of the world.
It probably depends on what your primary fear is. If you don't like Chromium being the driver here, like I understand that fear, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's kind of like what you get like Firefox and the Chromium browsers then, or the
Safari, I guess.
Yeah, are the players? Yeah, it's true, and Safari, because yeah, like Edge is Chromium, like everything. Opera is Chromium, not great, but I don't feel like this really has much weight on like that development one way or the other. It's like people are going to keep, if their goal is to spin up a product on and make like a browser as a product, like the easiest option is going to be to keep reaching for Chromium probably.
Browsers have always felt very similar to Linux distros to me a little bit. I like how you call it a driver. No, like it is the central engine, and 80 to 90% of how I use the machine is the distro. It's not even the kernel. It's the distro. What does it look like? How do I interact with it? What gets pushed to me if I want it to be pushed to me or not? It's all in the distro. So I am on your side of thinking here a little bit, Noel, in the regards of like, as long as Chrome is thrown a little bit, that's always a good chip in the bucket. And I definitely have a different flavor of the month time to time of like how I want to interact with the web and the companies that put out these products. And most of that is satiated from the distro level, from the face paint page, I guess. Because like, yeah, that's what it is. It's just face paint, but it feels good. It works for me.
There are concerns, right, over like web entity standards, like for browsers and JavaScript and CSS and all that. And I feel like that's been a concern we've discussed as well. If Google can just do things, it's like, oh, Chromium and its ilk support it. It kind of doesn't matter if the rest, like they can just drive the standards adoption. I think that's like the main concern there, like at that lower level. But yeah, above that, if it's like the de-Googleification, like I don't want Google to have all this, then it's like, okay, I don't really care if you're using Chromium under the hood.
What's Ladybird like? I actually have never downloaded or used it.
It's not ready yet.
Oh, it's not ready. Okay.
No, it's still very much in the early stages of, actually, there may be like a very early beta version, but basically it's a bunch of tech people who have helped build browsers in the past and just want to build something completely from the ground up with no help from any existing browser. Anything. No Chromium, no Gecko, no nothing. Yeah. So you can search for it online and read a little bit more about the team behind it and the things that they're doing. But it just seems like such an enormous task, especially in today's way of the browser, that they'll be able to recreate all of the functionality and all the APIs and all the stuff that people have come to expect from scratch. It's very ambitious.
That sounds very ambitious. There's like something about human nature as well as needing certain levels of hierarchy and red tape and organization to make gears turn. Like DAOs are a great idea. There's a reason they work in 0.0001% of situations. Having tried to start a DAO myself personally before, and as part of a team I was on, oh my gosh, it's just like the human nature of organization is a beast. It's a gargantuan task. They're going to need gargantuan SOPs and ways to handle themselves. It'd be cool if they do it.
Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on them. They're looking for sponsors. They want to be fully funded and not beholden to VCs, for instance. So they've got a lot of really nice high-level ideas. It's just the question of if they'll be able to achieve such a great undertaking.
Do they have in the manifesto somewhere that like, we will not end up receiving most of our funding from Google to keep us alive to help us curb antitrust?
I think they do. something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay, good. Like, I'm a Firefox user. I'm not like trying to throw too much shade. It is what it is. But
I still use Chrome as my daily drive, for better or for worse. It's true.
Yep.
And that's actually a good segue into our next topic, which is all about Google. They recently got a ruling on their federal court case for their antitrust suit that was brought against them. So they won. They do not have to sell off Chrome. They do not have to sell off Android. They basically kind of get away scot-free, if you ask me, in terms of what they have to do, which is share some of their search data with other competitor browsers. Yeah, which I'm sure they will appeal and find a way not to do. But the decision really raises the question about how much regulators can or will rein in big tech and what that means for competition today. I think that the ruling does show that regulators can't keep up with it, but do you see this kind of a ruling emboldening other tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, OpenAI, et cetera, to also potentially do things that may or may not be legal, completely legal?
It has to. Yeah. It has to. Yeah, it has to. I just wonder like what the way that'll be chewed on by those constituents. It also raises the question of what is good versus progress. Because we all know when you have one repo versus several repos, centralization makes you go fast. I would rather have a monopoly and better technology than a decentralized landscape and less technology than the next guy. I'm not sure if like we want to go too hard on telling Google and Microsoft to chill out at the detriment of forward progress, but I have no knowledge. I'm not an economist. I don't know how that works.
I think it'd be hard to draw the line either way. Like it'd be hard to even speculate. I'm sure people have their guesses.
Yeah. Antitrust enforcement just seems like almost like a completely lost cause because none of our governments can move fast enough to keep up with the way that tech is evolving. So we need something. I don't know what the answer is, but we need some way to curb them and rein them in a little bit. Just don't know how we're going to do it.
The economies of scale happen so quickly in tech, right? Before, it was easier to see come in over a 10-year thing. It's okay, this company's getting big, like they're this share of the market. It's so much more nebulous when you're like users doing searches. Like, when does that become a problem? And like, how much more quickly one of those entities can be 15% more efficient. It's trivial for everyone to switch to them as their supplier. Is I just change a preference, and it's all free. It's there. So it seems bleak, and AI like prompting feels like particularly bad. But people use other search engines, like they do, especially in the tech groups in these circles. It feels like people doing it have a matter of principle. It is what it is. But it's weird news if you're on the board of Microsoft or like a major shareholder, because it's always okay, good, like less antitrust power. But it's also like, this is a big win for Google, So I don't know.
These conversations ride on the assumed truth that there's a separation of like church and state. Church here being like technology. Like, oh no, those are two different entities. And this entity needs to have power over that entity to make sure there's not these big monopolies, blah, 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 the conversations we could talk about. And totally, like, I don't think any of us want a reality where like those are completely merged because power becomes corrupted and way too centralized. But at the same time, it's a nuanced conversation because, especially in the age of AI now, we are changing how we govern ourselves as biological entities ourselves. Technology is changing how we govern each other. If we didn't have electricity, the stock market would disappear. It wouldn't disappear, but it would become inoperable for a while. There'd be disasters. As such, like, we're commanded in our behavior by the technology. So I think that creates extra hairy blurring of lines here, where it's like some of it is just pure steel in the factory coming out, but some of it's also a metaphysical question of how we govern ourselves. DAOs are always interesting. I always go back to the DAO thing that happened 2 years ago, where people really tried to build actual incorporated companies off of like smart contracts that dictated how they governed each other. And that was probably like the deepest we've seen of that metaphysical way that we arrange ourselves. But yeah, traffic going through a browser, like Noel said, that's just maybe how we govern ourselves. Like it's a self-steering thing to some degree, not to all the degree. It makes it very difficult to wade through if it's a problem or not. Is this a more efficient way for humans to live? I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was interesting about this when this ruling finally came down is that Google stock surged 8%. So obviously the market is in favor of Google continuing to hold the power that it does and doesn't feel too bad about what that means for us more generally. Yeah.
I think like Apple and Microsoft both had upticks as well, right? It's this weird thing where it's like the market seems to be more concerned with the hand of the government than like the power of Google's like competitive edge there. The competitors' stock, that's the optic that feels weird. You'd think the competitors would be like, oh, this is a win for Google, which is bad for us. But it's like, no, the market seems to be more concerned with the laws themselves than would set the precedent for what services that Microsoft owns or Facebook owns or Netflix owns. That is the thing that is greater concern. Again, to the market, at least. Yeah, we'll see. And again, this relationship is weird. Like, what's Google's payment to Apple every year to keep Chrome the default search? Like, that's a big number. Like, back to my Firefox joke a second ago. Like, it's crazy how intertwined this all is. There's this like weird grid of, okay, these are our services. I don't want to say it's like collaborative, or I'm blanking on the word, but some kind of like back dealing going on necessarily. Like in this case, it's just like this gridlock of the power in these in tech here.
Is collusion the word you're looking for?
Collusion was, I don't know if it's collusion, but it's just kind of like this, okay, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of feeling.
Not really sure how that's going to pan out in the future, but I'm sure we will have more news about it in the not too distant future. So let's talk about something else that really within the last couple of weeks, especially, it seems like has been cropping up again and again, and that is security on the web. I actually didn't know about this until prepping for this show, but it's been a rough month for digital security beyond NPM, which most developers are aware of. PayPal confirmed a massive data breach that affected 16 million accounts. And at the same time, there was a separate glitch that froze 10 billion euros worth of transactions across European banks. And then on the developer side, as most of us are probably aware by now, NPM has been hit by not 2, but maybe even 3 back-to-back supply chain attacks within the last couple of weeks. First, there was the OSS maintainer Quix. He got phished, and attackers published malicious versions of widely used packages like debug and chalk. all over. It's funny though, because the code attempted to hijack cryptocurrency transactions if you had a wallet attached to your machine
Like
that you
on the
were also
machine
doing,
somewhere. Yeah.
that you're also doing your web development work on. I saw that probably they got next to nothing for all their work.
Yeah. I think it was less than $1,000.
And then days later, there was a worm-like supply chain attack that was called Shai Hulud, which was a nice Dune reference, where it had malicious packages that included post-install scripts that were harvesting secrets and exfiltrating them through rogue GitHub action workflows and then publishing those tainted versions to over 100 plus packages on NPM. And these included big packages. There were CrowdStrike libraries in there. There was the Singularity and NX compromise. We just can't seem to lock ourselves down. So I guess the question is, or the discussion can start off, what can we do to make our ecosystems less fragile and less susceptible to these sorts of attacks? They're just coming hard and fast lately.
We just interviewed Feras Abukadije. He's the founder and CEO of Socket. The big thing we talked about, how like the vector for all of these has been like post-install scripts, I guess for NPM specifically. If the precedent wasn't to allow packages to run post-install scripts, like all of this would be so much harder. So I suspect the actionable thing over the next 6 months is there will be like changes in the defaults of how those behave. NPM will do something like PNPM and Yarn. There's already a precedent for being able to control which packages can and cannot run scripts versus it being like an all or nothing. There are things we can do here to make us like less prone to this. And I think with the amount of heat that we're seeing right now, there probably will be a change at this level wherein there's some kind of auditing layer that's like, hey, all of a sudden this package, which has never had in scripts before, is trying to run a script on your machine. Do you want to allow that kind of thing? Which seems totally reasonable. Like if I have a couple packages which I know are doing something at the OS level, it's okay, those can, but like why is something that's doing like text minification or something, why does that need to run a post install script? It's okay, probably not. So that'll be big. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's also this kind of precedent wherein when installing a package, whatever, like you don't think about what you're actually doing. If that was you downloading an exe from some random website and running it on your computer, you'd have way more pause than any NPM install that you do. And I think there was always the thing like, oh, it's open source, it got eyes on it. But obviously there's like big enough windows in there where these things are sneaking out and people are pulling and doing updates and pushing them. And that cadence is so fast that it's been enough to propagate these last couple major vectors here.
Yeah.
Even without a post-install script, they'll still figure it out. Like the line will always be moving. But man, is there so much we can do now, like you said. Noel.
There's a back and forth for sure. I think right now there's a very wide opening that's very susceptible to these kinds of problems. So I think it'll close. There'll still be some potential to do something wrong. Maybe some package that does need scripts will be one that's compromised, although there will be something else. Who knows?
Do you think something like two-factor authentication or other stuff could be used to kind of help add a little bit more friction to the actual publishing of these malicious packages, like enter your 6-digit authenticator key or something to just add a little bit of extra security? Do you think that would also be beneficial?
I would assume it would help. I'm trying to think in these cases, like probably. I've never maintained like an NPM package that has this much activity, so I don't know if it would raise any alarms. Like maybe I'm making changes frequently enough where every time I update something, I'm just hitting publish and just hitting OK. And it would be easy for something to still slip through if I was the one doing it. But it would help like the self-publishing problem, right? It would help quite a bit with that. I don't know if users or developers in organizations would want to. I would think so. It seems like a pretty low amount of effort, but I don't know. Yeah.
If the attack vector is the person, then 2FA is marginally helpful.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you're a maintainer and you've already gotten access, or like you said, you've somehow installed some malware that's just going to keep propagating, it's not a lot that you can do.
But it's got to help. It's just another pebble to fill in a crack somewhere.
It removes the capacity to do a publish from something like a worker, right? And I think that is like the big thing here. There is a human step that needs to occur all the time to publish a version, which I think like a lot of these workflows intentionally were not set up. It's like we make a thing, we tag it, and it's automatically going to publish to NPM. It's like that makes sense. That's probably how you do it. But yeah, maybe there's some, or maybe it's something that like NPM enforces, and it's like you hit a certain size and it's like, we won't let you publish with the number of pulls that you've got a month without a human being involved here, or something like that. I don't know.
Do you think that there is more of this happening because of AI? Like people who might not have been able to do this before now are because they have AI agents who can help them write this type of stuff? Or is it just that maybe we're getting better at catching it and it's getting publicized more widely? Like, it seems like it's really ramped up in terms of scale in the last year or so in a way that I don't remember it ever being before. And I'm not sure why that is.
It's a good question. Hey, getting $1,000. Yeah, they used AI. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. It's weird because this stuff seems so sophisticated. The attack vector was when they figured out a package would execute code that was in PR titles. It was like a SQL injection, but there was a GitHub action basically that would echo out the name of the PR title that had just been opened against it, right? So like someone would open a PR against this repo, and then they would echo it for some piece of their workflow, like some piece of their automated thing for like a log or something. Someone figured out that they could like escape that and get it to execute code that was in the PR title. So then like they did that, they used that to echo out keys into their own branch or make a web request. And what was crazy is like that problem had actually already been fixed on the main branch, but you can open a PR against an old branch, right? Like in GitHub. So they opened a PR against an old branch, which still had this thing in it. GitHub is still using the action as defined in that old branch. So they were still able to get the keys out. Someone thought of that. Someone saw all the pieces and knew how to make that come together. So like that kind of puts me in this mode like maybe it's not AI, but then on the other hand, it's weird that none of these have been like hugely successful as defined in dollars, right? If your goal is to make money, I guess, it seems like a lot of effort and energy for an attack that hasn't been super lucrative for the perpetrator.
And was caught quickly after.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Yeah, like maybe I suspect like the copycats, like you get copycats more rapidly that are like slightly tweaked versions. That's probably facilitated to some extent by AI. But it's hard for me to speculate beyond that.
It's not going away anytime soon. Like we said, hopefully the people at the highest levels of the platforms, NPM, PNPM, I know that it's happening on PyPy and Go Package Manager and like all the other platforms. It's not just JavaScript. That's just the ones I'm most familiar with. Hopefully they will help introduce better controls so that we have less of this in the future.
And we'll get some cultural changes too. Noel said, and just like I've been pinning my package versions recently, like little things like that. Just like, why didn't you do that before? It's a moment of awareness for us all.
Yeah, you just trusted that the little carrot meant everything would be better when you updated to a new package. And yeah, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're pinning all of our packages. We're using NPM shrink wrap, which I've never used before.
Oh, I haven't used that either.
Yeah, you might want to look into it if you do publish NPM packages. All right. So another topic that we have is AI related. And that is the fact that a lot of companies are wanting us to use AI at work. They're encouraging it. For instance, the one that we're going to talk about is the Coinbase CEO revealed that he had fired engineers who didn't adopt AI coding tools like Copilot and Cursor within a week. He says AI is important, not optional, and wants 50% of the company's code generated by AI by the end of the quarter. So, as usual, the critics are arguing that this kind of mandate hurts morale, just like when we argue that the points don't matter if you're pointing your stories and how many points you get done in a sprint. But others are saying it's just the reality of staying competitive. And in a kind of question, do you think that companies should mandate AI tool usage as a condition of employment? Should this be a thing?
I wouldn't think so. This feels to me like someone mandating they use like a certain editor or something. Not in that like editor choice maybe has as much an impact on productivity one way or the other. It just feels like a weird thing to be, drawing lines around. I'm not saying that organizations need to have strong stances one way or the other. Maybe they can be like highly encouraging it. And it's like, well, you're not productive enough with our stack. Like maybe that's because you're not using AI or maybe you're using it poorly or whatever. It feels weird to just say 50% of the code should be AI generated. Feels like just like a very bizarre hill to die on.
Yeah.
It's also a very non-forgiving way to allow a new tool to sit with people. Like it's sure maybe it's efficient to getting people to do it. Just because it's efficient doesn't mean it's the best thing. Let me tell you about my new sorting algorithm, Stalin sort. It goes in O of 1. You just go along the list, and if something's not in order, I eliminate it. Now everything's sorted.
There are a couple of questions that I have about this. The first being, how are you going to know whether the code was generated by AI versus by a developer? because I use a tool called GitLens in VS Code, which just shows you each line and who wrote it. So you can see it was added 7 months ago, it was added by this developer in this PR, whatever. When I'm using Claude Code, it's still showing up as me because I'm the one who's actually committing the code and pushing it to GitHub, even though Claude wrote it and I probably edited it a bunch before it actually got pushed to GitHub. How are they going to know that it was me versus it was Claude, or it was a combination of the two, which is probably the more likely scenario for a lot of this? I'm not just because, God, I don't trust Claude as far as I can throw it. You tell Claude to do something, you give it some other files to reference, and it still goes off and
does whatever
do something completely different without lots and lots of oversight. I really struggle to see how they're going to quantify this in the way that he is saying that they will.
It also feels like a forcing function, like time and time again, on whether it be my team or a team above me telling me that they need something. They'll say, okay, when do you need this? By this date. That's not possible. Too bad. We're just setting the date because it's a forcing function. And everybody knows it's like maybe not going to hit that date. Because the CEO is saying that this was going to be my immediate response. It depends on the company. Like, we're privileged enough to work with people that are actively curious to learn new things every day. And that's a completely different beast than if you have a team of like folks who are just there to show up, do a great job, because that's what you hired them for, and then go do something else. And so like those people may not reach for something as quick as you would hope them. And then there's a lag. So there maybe does have to be some forcing function. But man, dude, you can do it eloquently. That's possible too.
It just seems very strange. If you want to cull some portion of your workforce that you deem the least productive, sure. But why say it's like the users that are least proficient in command line, or like those that don't know bash, or those that aren't prompting as much? It just seems like whatever. If you want to pick an arbitrary metric, sure. But
yeah. Can you think of any metrics that do make sense for measuring AI adoption or AI usage? Like, I can see how much money I've spent with Claude on a daily basis.
Yeah, prompts per minute. Yeah.
How many I've consumed? Yeah.
Some way to like judge feature add, if like we could put story points. Let's say story points are universal and we can use them, or t-shirt sizes. How many points can you push across with the minimum amount of code? What's that ratio? Like, minimizing code has been more pertinent than ever. That could be a quality of success because that's turd.
I feel like if you're just academically, though, trying to get like a number on like adoption, or like what percentage of work that devs are doing is heavily AI assisted, that seems tough. At what point is the autocomplete like really AI? You can say all of it is, and you make that point, sure. And then it's like probably very high. Right? If anytime you have a function autocompletes doing something, you can very quickly probably get to like 90% of code or something. But that feels very different than me in like agent mode, just having it go off and spin up a whole new workflow and files and project and stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
And there's always going to be value of having the non-AI person on your team. Like, it's a pie chart of skills. You want a full pie chart.
I wasn't even thinking about the non-AI person, but just the non-AI development time to make sure that our skills stay sharp as developers, because I am sure that they're atrophying, at least personally, just because I can use Claude and I can use GitHub Copilot. So I don't have to go out and figure out why that error is getting thrown in my GitHub action workflow, or figure out how to fix this TS-lint error, because I can just tell Claude to fix it instead. It's important for me as a developer to sometimes not do things with Claude just so that I can still do them.
I find if I'm in a project that I've been using a lot of prompting on and not been auditing it super well, I get this like increasing anxiety of hitting the point where I'm going to have to actually go into the code and figure out what's going on, because I know it's going to be bad. If I actually have some really gnarly bug here, like it's going to be hell. Because it's like, okay, I've just unleashed like a dev that's like doing a bunch of drugs before they write any code all the time and just written my whole project. I've got to go audit it. So yeah, like I don't know. We've been trying to come up with these metrics forever, and it's really hard to know. Even coming up with a metric for like code health, we try to come up with like complexity, like all that stuff is just, it's so, you can do it and turn your head and squint and you get numbers that kind of mean something, but it's just not practical. So I feel like you kind of just have to ask people. That's probably ask a dev what percentage of their work they're just doing with prompting now, and you get an idea.
An honest answer.
So before we go on to our hot takes, we will take a quick break and be right back. This episode is brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket provides AI-first session replay and analytics, which surface the UX and technical issues impacting user experiences. Start understanding where your users are struggling by trying it for free at logrocket.com. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts of the panelist episode. It's where we get to rant about things, and it can be fun, it can be ridiculous, it can be anger-inducing, whatever you want. So, Noel, would you like to start us off with your hot take for this episode?
I'm increasingly getting to the point where like I find myself just being like a reviewer of code. I was already getting this way just as organizations grow and stuff, like spending more and more time writing code. And I'm just like, it's becoming more and more the reality I find now that like the writing of the code is not the hard part of software development anymore, increasingly to a degree that's like almost absurd. I struggle to even articulate it. Like before, I think that was the case as well. We would always say this thing, it was like requirements gathering and the like APIs and interfaces and how things plugged in. That was the hard part. And we'd say that, but then still a large portion of the time was like writing code one way or the other. But I have found like as prompting gets better, and then regardless of how you do it, if you're just like in agent mode, letting things run and do their thing and then going in and letting your project be kind of unhinged, or you're like very diligent as you go step by step, regardless, it's still just so much less of my time is actually like writing characters and functions, even if I'm still reading code. And it's cool being that productive, but I fear that we're going to see like industry burnout to a scale like we've never seen before, as everyone just like, I hate just having to do code reviews all the time. Like it's kind of hellish. So I don't know. I'm sure there'll be some kind of like pushback. People will be writing more, but yeah.
Yeah. I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. So I get newsletters for marketing and for stuff other than web development. And basically it seems like everybody in every industry is overwhelmed by the amount of tools and AI things and just like generally not knowing what's going on in the world in general. Yeah, I think we're in for a reckoning pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. Again, like one way or another, maybe AI won't change everything overnight, but even the way in which we work is changing so quickly. It's like analysis paralysis, hell, this kind of like existential, what's my value if I can just ask the machine to do it kind of thing. Like it's all kind of happening.
Yeah, good hot take. Paul, what is your hot take?
Because mine is like strikingly similar. I was going to talk more about the job market as I'm seeing it, because I just know a lot of folks, because I have many younger siblings who are entering the job market. So not just them, but their friends. And I didn't expect to see what I'm seeing, but it seems like there are so many jobs out there. Like I'm overwhelmed at how many jobs there are for people to choose from. They're just all crap. They just all suck. I was always afraid like, oh man, like jobs are going to go away or jobs are going to become super scarce and like seniors only. I've said it on this podcast early in 2025, late 2024, but it's kind of the opposite. There's way more jobs and they're just paid way less. And I think this is a good one after Noel's, because that's what we're seeing, where there's going to be a reckoning of, look, I just can't do that because I'm a human being. And the response is, oh, there's going to be somebody who can do that. So you're going to get paid less and that person will get paid more. I like that, just supply and demand. So I'm a little bit afraid of like exactly what Noel talked about, which is industry burnout. All of us on this pod right now are feeling it a lot. And I can't imagine like entering the field. So I will call it the enshittification of tech jobs. That's somebody on Reddit used that title and I loved it. So I'm stealing it. It's kind of seeing it play out finally a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. I hope things get better. I don't know exactly how they're going to get better or what that's going to look like, but we can't continue the way that we are.
Probably need more AI. That's probably the answer.
Yes, right? That is it. That's a good one. All right. So my rant for this time is going to be about security because we've already been talking about it, but it just shocks me how bad we've become about security or how lax we've become as a society. I mean, vibe coding came along and then suddenly things just started blowing wide open and data breaches started happening and apps started getting pushed out and then taken down, and like people were uploading their driver's licenses and they weren't encrypting them, like the T app, and then against the T or whatever it was, like the guy's version of it. So I remember when I was a little kid back in the 90s when it was like it was impossible to find it. People wouldn't give you anything. They would not put out, they didn't want their name in the phone book, they didn't want their address published, they didn't want anything like pictures, none of that. And now we're all just putting it out there on every website. We're putting our credit cards into things. We're plugging our social security numbers into stuff. Just God, please just think about it before you just put all of your personal information online. Think for a second about when this website gets hacked, what kind of a problem that's going to create if your driver's license is out there or your social security number is in there or the password that you also used to access your bank is the same one that you're using to access this New York Times game puzzle or whatever. Please just think more about security and be a little bit more security conscious. Use a password generator, use a password manager, password one, Bitwarden, something. Please just think a little bit more about keeping your information secure because, God, it is such a pain when it gets exposed.
And now we're in a world with voice ID on bank.
Yes.
I cloned my voice in 11 Labs. It was really easy.
It's easy. Yeah.
Exactly. I just heard that celebrity scams are becoming a thing and they'll call you or they'll message you and it's some celebrity trying to start a chat with you and it's not some scammer.
You see tech people falling for it all the time. Like some of these big like NPM breaches, it's like you look at these phishing emails people clicked on. That is a good phishing email. The way they spoof like the email, the sender address, or they'll use like something that's super similar or is under the same domain, but they like the company hasn't set up like the email handshake on like specific subdomains and stuff. So they'll use something that's there. It doesn't get the little lock on it. But like the email clients won't show you unless you like expand it and know to go look in. It's tough, even when being diligent. So it's just, I worry for sure.
Just take that extra second to think about it before you just put it out there. That's all I'm saying.
Totally.
All right. I think that is going to wrap up this episode of the Pod Rocket Panelist Podcast for this month. Thank you, Paul, for joining us. And thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Always fun to have these. We get an excuse to banter.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you again on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks.